Hi, folks. Today's episode is brought to you by one of my favorite sponsors, if not my favorite, SunsetLakeSebede.com. If you use the coupon code LeftIsBest, you're going to get 20% off of all of their products, all of their tinctures, they've got like four different strengths of the tinctures. They have 3 different flavors. These will help you relax. They'll help you to go to sleep. They also have Sebede coffee and Sebede fudge and Sebede gummies. They have gummies with melatonin. They have tinctures with melatonin. Now that I think about it, I took that last night. It's been helping me quite a bit to get some sleep during this really difficult week that we've had here. Also, they have topicals. They have lotion. They have salves. They have salves with the arnica. They have salves with lidocaine. And they've reduced all of their prices on those topicals. They have gummies and fudge and coffee. I said all that, but they're a great company. Their Sebede is third-party tested. You can see exactly what's in it, broken down, all the different compounds, all the different types of Sebede that's in the Sebede. They also have great business practices. They're a mostly employee-owned company. They pay a minimum of $20 an hour. They have great farming practices. They don't use any pesticides, integrated pest management they use regenerative farming practices, so they take care of the soil. They also are movement partners. These guys have given thousands of dollars to things like strike funds. They have given thousands of dollars to refugee resettlement, to helping folks out with the flooding that took place in Vermont. They're up in Vermont. Food pantries. They've given tens of thousands of dollars to carceral reform. This is a great company, a great product. Fans of the show, Left is Best is their coupon code, 20% off. That's Sunset Lake Sebede. Do yourself a favor. Also, they make great gifts. And now for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, September 15th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, executive editor, The American Prospect, David Dayen, will be here. Talk about the strike. We talk about the first of several trials of the century and more. Then Shunte Sanders Beasley, former vice president of the UAW Local 869, a worker at the Stellantis Stamping Plant in Warren, Michigan, on strike. And that strike by the UAW is historic. It is the first time they have ever struck the big three at the same time. 13,000 of the 146,000 UAW workers taking action at the 3 automakers in targeted walk-offs. Meanwhile, in Washington, McCarthy pulls back the defense bill as well as the amendment to ban the sales of cluster bombs, in a sign that the government shutdown is now all but inevitable. In New York, Trump seemingly successfully delays his New York State fraud trial. Hunter Biden indicted of lying on his gun application. Meanwhile, polls show that a partisan divide over COVID boosters as Ron DeSantis encourages Floridians under 65 to skip it altogether. Republican House members advance a bill to block the Biden student loan debt forgiveness program. And the EPA reverses a Trump rule, allows states to block projects which will endanger water quality. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us. Slowly recovering from COVID. If we're lucky, we'll all be back in the office on Monday. I'm feeling a little bit better, despite the fact that I sound like I'm actually worse, but feeling a little better. Thanks so much for indulging us this week. Came so close to being able to get that booster, which undoubtedly would have helped. I should also say my son is getting ready to go back to school on Monday. He missed his entire first week, but for the first day. So that's a drag for him. Let's get into this. This is a big deal. Last night at midnight, Shawn Fain, president of the UAW, basically let everyone know what was going to happen. Three different, or I should say, strikes against three different companies, the big three, in targeted factories across the country, 13,000 strikers. Here's Shawn Fain.
It's official. They are officially on strike. We've got Gabe Cohen in Wayne, Michigan right now. You're hearing from Shawn Fain, the UAW president.
And they want to call us greedy. They got the whole thing backwards.
What would you say to the CEOs of these auto companies that say the union has not been acting in good faith, that there were delays? What do you make of that?
Let's talk about what good faith is. They've had our economic demands for 6 weeks. We've told them from day one, we expect a bargain now, not wait till the end. They waited till last week. We had to file unfair labor practice charges on 2 companies to get them to come to the table. So they waited till the last week to want to get down to business. Shame on them, and what they're saying is complete BS.
You heard the CEO of Ford say that it would bankrupt them if they met your demands. What do you think of that?
I think it's a joke. You know what? They could double our pay right now. Labor, the cost of labor that goes into a vehicle is 5% of the vehicle. They could double our wages, and they could not raise the price of vehicles. They would still make billions of dollars. It's a lie, like everything else that comes out of their mouth.
The strategy is 3 facilities. What impact do you think that could make on the auto industry as a whole across this country?
We'll find out. You know what? And it's going to keep on building if they don't come to the table for our members.
More facilities are more facilities going to feel this? Are more facilities going on strike?
If they don't take care of our members, they will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, this is. There was questions. I mentioned this when Shawn Fain was elected president of the UAW as to whether his rhetoric was sincere or not. And, one never knows, but he is certainly backing it up. I mean, this is a big deal, and it's going to escalate the longer that the big three refuse to negotiate and find a way to get this resolved. I mean, good for them. Meanwhile, we're going to see the SAG-AFTRA, I think, is going back to the table with the producers in a couple of weeks. And in California, there is a bill that is sitting on Gavin Newsom's desk as of, I think, yesterday, that basically says unemployment compensation for people on strike. That would be huge. And it's going to be interesting to see how he reacts, particularly with his desire to be president someday. there's sort of maybe we'll get into this later with David Dayen, but let me just read a couple of words from our sponsors. Two sponsors today. One that was very helpful. One of the things you can't do when you're on COVID is you can't go out and get food. So part of it's delivery, but part of it, for me anyways, is HelloFresh. HelloFresh is an ingredient delivery service, plus more actually. But basically what it does is they send you ingredients. You go in, they have something like 40 different dishes every week. And they have all different types of menus you can have. Like one is family friendly. That's usually which I go for. One is that, maybe you don't eat meat or you're a vegetarian rather. You want one that's a little bit more on the fit size because you want to lose some weight or whatever it is. They have a bunch of different styles of the menus, and they have a lot of different time points, which is key for me. HelloFresh, like I say, 40 weekly recipes. The beauty of HelloFresh, because I've tried other services in the past, and some have been pretty good. The food is great, but the prep time for some of these is amazingly quick, and that's what I need. There are times where I can spend 40 minutes to prep something, and usually when they say 40 minutes, it ends up being longer. I made a beef bulgogi. Am I saying that right? Beef bulgogi?
Bulgogi.
Yeah, okay. I made it in 20 minutes. And I think it was organic beef now that I think about it. I did it was a ravioli with spinach and I think it was ricotta cheese and chicken. And that was like 15, 20 minutes. I've done others. I had a barbecue pork sandwich that took like maybe 10, 15 minutes. These are great meals. And for me, really key that it's quick. I don't need anything that's too intricate. I just want something that's fresh and delicious so I can make my kid a meal and feel good about it. And frankly, not only is the food great and it's quick, it's significantly cheaper than ordering takein and even grocery shopping, and there's no waste. Not only do they have 40 recipes and over 100 add-on items that you can choose every week, they've got like quick lunches, they got fresh snacks, they got breakfasts. You shop HelloFresh Market, add any of these tasty, time-saving things to your weekly box. So when you get HelloFresh, you're getting top-notch produce since it travels from the farm to your door in less than 7 days. Go to HelloFresh.com/50majority. That's the numbers 50majority, and use the code 50majority for 50% off plus 15% off the next 2 months. What? Do I have that right? 50% off plus 15% off the next 2 months? It's like, I can't do the math, but that you're paying very little. Check it out. HelloFresh.com/50majority. And then you use the code 50majority. Our next sponsor, one of those sponsors that I was using before they became a sponsor. And this is the surprise that I did not know for a long time. Fall is a planting season. Many plants actually do better when they are planted in the fall. And it's because they don't have the same shock when their roots hit the ground in there. They get a chance to acclimate, then they go dormant, and then in spring, they're off to the races. And the place where I get my shrubs or my fruit trees or my shade trees or whatever those, or my bloomerangs, which is a lilac that comes back twice in a year, fastgrowingtrees.com. Fastgrowingtrees.com has experts that have curated thousands of plants so you can find the perfect fit for your place. And, this is unlike going to a box store or, going to those like DIY stores, because they've got everything there. You don't have to drive around to nurseries. You don't have to drive around to the discount stores. You don't have to worry about putting in the back of your Subaru and get dirt all over the place and then ruin them. They're shipped to your door in 1 to 2 days. Doesn't matter. Like I say, you want privacy, you want shade, you want fruit trees, you want natural beauty. Fast Growing Trees has in-house experts. They will talk to you 24/7. If you don't have a green thumb, they will make you feel like you do. There have been over 1 million happy Fast Growing Trees customers across the country. Plus, they have a 30-day Alive and Thrive guarantee. So if it dies after it gets there, they'll replace it. Check it out, folks. From Hosea pear trees, plum trees, bloomerang trees to grass. I don't know what you call that. Long grass. Fast Growing Trees is great. And the beauty about this is, I don't know if their trees actually grow faster, but they ship 5 to 6 foot big trees. So when you put them into the ground, you can get fruit the next year. I mean, if they're a fruit tree, not if they're a different type of tree, obviously. 15% off your entire order right now. fastgrowingtrees.com/majority, but only through October 15th. If you're in zone 5, you can plant all the way at least October 15th. That's 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com/majority, fastgrowingtrees.com/majority. All right, quick break. When we come back, David Dayen. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. It is Emma's out. She'll be back on Monday, hopefully. Welcome back to the program. David Dayen, executive editor of the American Prospect, who is going to be in town in less than a month. No, almost a month to the day, October 16th. There is, if you're in New York, folks, I'll have more details. I'm going to be there. But there's you guys are doing a fundraiser.
We're going to do a little event on October 16th. That's a Monday night. It's going to be in New York City, and we're going to get more details. It's great that you're going to be out there, and we'll have that firmed up in the next week or so, and we'll certainly let your audience know.
I subscribed to the American Prospect about 5 minutes after you were named executive editor because I knew you'd be doing something great with it. And I honestly, I feel like I should double my subscription. It really, you guys do such great work over there. I can't even. It's amazing. But
thank you.
All right, let's go through this. We're going to have Shunte Sanders Beasley. She's a former vice president of a local UAW out in Warren, Michigan, on to talk more about the strike. But let's talk about this. I mean, contextualize this for us. I mean, it's a big deal. This is the first time they've gone. But what's your sense of Shawn Fain and the administration, the Biden administration, and what their perspective is on this?
Well, Biden literally just 2 minutes ago wrapped up remarks on this, where he said that record profits should be shared in record contracts. So, I mean, I think the administration's made their position pretty well known. Fain comes out of a sort of it's a movement within UAW called Uniting All Workers for Democracy. It's a reform movement. In past years, the beginning of bargaining with the Big Three would kick off where the head of the union would have a handshake photo op with the CEOs of the three companies. I mean, it was definitely you can at the worst you call it collaboration or collusion. At best, you call it a friendly relationship between the union leadership and the CEOs. This time, Fain kicked that off by going to plants and shaking hands with the workers. And he has consistently called this the members' contract, the members' demands, not his demands. So he has opened up sort of this in a democratic way, and he's trying to right the wrongs of a number of different contracts that have been put forward, particularly after 2008 when they went to a two-tiered system. So there's sort of a retribution for the past, but also looking towards the future, because we have a changeover in transportation to electric vehicles. The Big Three and other auto companies are trying to use this as an opportunity to say, oh, these electric vehicles, that's covered under a different master agreement than the internal combustion engines, and so we're gonna pay you less because we're not covered under a union contract for those electric vehicles. It's a race to the bottom, as Fain has said, and it's a key part. It's the context for this entire negotiation.
And give me a sense of where the Department of Labor is in this. I noticed, on Twitter, you took Politico to task for trying to make it seem like Marty Walsh was a magician and sort of working out these things. And you made the point that Julie Su went and dealt with the ports. I think we're looking at a strike there, and she had worked that out. What's behind something like that? Every time Politico does something, it always writes something. I shouldn't say every time, but the vast majority of times, it's always like what you're seeing is the second order story. The real story is why they're writing it or who fed it to them.
Right. I mean, well, Julie Su is very involved in this UAW situation. Her and Gene Sperling are the White House's point people on this, and they've been involved in back channel talks or maybe the negotiations themselves. I'm not sure, but this is certainly someone who's very capable of managing labor management relations and hammering out agreements. The situation here is that the companies have brought in record profits. Mary Barra was on CNN today and was asked, how do you justify your $30 million salary?
Let's play this clip. We have this clip.
Go ahead.
This is the CEO of GM and she was asked. She's sitting down with CNN's Vanessa Yurkovich, and the CEO of GM, Mary Barra, and this is the exchange. This was pretty impressive.
The union is asking for a 40% wage increase over 4 years. They're asking for that in part because they say CEOs like yourself, leading the big three, are making those kind of pay increases over the course of the last 4 years. You've seen a 34% pay increase in your salary. You make almost $30 million. Why should your workers not get the same type of pay increases that you're getting leading the company?
Well, if you look at compensation, my compensation, 92% of it is based on performance of the company. I think one of the strong aspects of the way our compensation for our represented employees is designed is not only are we putting a 20% increase on the table, we have profit sharing. So when the company does well, everyone does well. And for the last several years, that's resulted in record profit sharing for our represented employees. And I think you have to look at the whole compensation package, not only 20% increase in gross wage, but also the profit sharing aspect of it, world-class health care, and there's several other features. So we think we have a very competitive offer on the table, and that's why we want to get back there and get this done.
But if you're getting a 34% pay increase over 4 years and you're offering 20% to employees right now, do you think that's fair?
Well, I think when you look at the overall structure and the fact that 92% is based on performance, and you look at what we've been doing of sharing in the profitability when the company does well, I think we've got a very compelling offer on the table, and that's the focus I have right now.
Okay, so I want to, we need to clarify some terms here first. Right. She's saying it's based, 92% of her pay is based upon the performance of the company. Now, I mean, and what she's basically saying is the stock price. And we should say that performance of the company is not the same as the stock price, because we can increase the value of our stock by buying back stocks if we want to, which used to be illegal until Ronald Reagan changed, under Reagan, the SEC changed those rules. We can increase performance by firing and underpaying our workers in that instance. And we should say that obviously, her performance pay is not aligned with the performance of the way that the workers are.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in the 1990s, there was a rule that came out that said you have to tax executive salaries. The company is taxed for executive salaries. However, beyond the first, beyond the first $1 million, it's taxed. However, performance-based pay, like stock options, would not be taxed. And this led the headlong rush into compensating executives with stock compensation. It's basically a tax dodge on the part of companies, but it also has created this short-term mindset.
Can I also wait a second?
If I can get the stock price up.
I wanted to address this too, because I noticed that, because I've spoken to Bill Lazonick, who I'm sure you've spoken to in the past, and he attributes this to the change in capital gains tax in the early 80s during the Reagan era. There may have been
that's another part of it, but I mean, the companies certainly on their part, and I think Robert Reich came up with this, by the way, and he's repented for it. The part of we're going to tax excessive corporate pay. The idea was to try to get corporate CEO pay down, but they put this loophole in that said, oh, but if you give your money based on stock, that's okay. We're not going to tax that. And it led to this imbalance. And that's the hidden driver of buybacks, by the way, because, it aligned stock performance with executive compensation in such a way that short-term stock profits were prized, right? So that has created this situation where, if I sell some of the stock and the stock artificially rises, my pay rises. So I'm going to do that.
And we should say,
and it's not just
my pay.
buybacks.
Everybody in the C-suite is have their stuff structured that way, and the board of directors also end up getting paid. And so it's as if like the board of directors and the executives have almost like a side bet on the company. It's almost like a separate cottage industry that is sort of a barnacle to what the actual company itself is doing. And as long as the stock price goes up, which is not necessarily aligned with the so-called performance of the company, they're going to make more money.
Yeah, I think 30 years ago, the very quaint notion was that yes, the stock price is tied to the performance of the company and the productivity of the company. But we've seen now we have way too much evidence. We know that isn't actually the case, and that short-term events, whether to fire workers, whether to cut labor costs, whether to shortchange innovation, shortchange research and development, shortchange workplace safety, quality of the product, to seek monopoly rents. All of those things are they change the stock price, but they don't actually make you a better company, and it certainly doesn't pay off for the workers.
Do you think that interview right there, all the stuff that we saw with Howard Schultz, it really feels like in the context of these labor battles, like we've seen with the producers in the SAG-AFTRA and Writers Guild strikes, every time one of these executives, whether it's like in a on the record interview, or when they're, saying stuff to Variety in that instance, they come off so bad. Yeah. Is it in a way that I don't recall this happening before? Do you think that these executives are just more out of touch than at any other time? Or is it also a function of like things that are happening in the labor market are putting more pressure on them, and so they're getting tougher questions, and they're on almost like on a high wire?
Yeah, I think all of that is true. I mean, public sentiment has certainly changed. The latest poll I saw about the UAW strike is that 75% of the public supports the workers' position, and media reflects that to an extent. These particular CEOs, they're used to getting softball interviews on CNBC or Bloomberg. They're just not used to the kind of scrutiny that they're seeing about their own compensation, about whether workers are getting a fair shake. It's just a different mode of questioning that they're used to, and obviously they're not meeting up to the moment.
All right. We're going to be talking in about a half an hour or so to a representative from the UAW. So we'll get more into that. But I wanted to turn to the other sort of like, while we're here, a couple of questions, a few about the National Labor Relations Board. You wrote a piece about a non-compete agreement. And this is one of the big sort of reforms we've seen at the National Labor Relations Board. The most recent one, I want to get to this non-compete in a second, but I want to ask you just a couple of questions on the CEMEX ruling, which essentially, I've sort of referred to as card check light, in that it expedites the process of essentially the union recognition. It puts the burden on employers as to why there is a problem with just, a majority of the people saying we want a union, and not allowing for an extended period of time where the management will have the ability to sort of head off a union vote by unfair labor practices. Let's just talk a little bit about the limitations of that in terms of like what tools the National Labor Relations Board has at this point to actually get to a contract. So they
Yeah.
they have the ability to get to the existence of a union now much easier. What about the next step with the contract?
Yeah, I mean, that's more difficult because the NLRB by statute is prevented from saying, okay, after 90 days, you have to go to mediation or something like that. That's disallowed in the statute. However, there is, and our Harold Meyerson actually broke this, there is a potential for kind of a workaround that if there is a lack of bargaining in good faith, as presumed by a certain amount of time that passes between the union recognition and the first contract, that can be seen as some sort of unfair labor practice in and of itself, and the remedy would be to set a contract at a particular level, maybe based on the industry that they're in, the wage scale, the average wage scale in that industry, and it goes to X level above that or something like that. This is a little more of a roundabout way, but it's kind of the only way that we can get that under the current law, under the NLRA. Anything beyond that, you would have to, get some legislation in Congress. The PRO Act that has been sort of languishing in Congress for years included a mediation angle that after 90 days, 120 days, I forget the exact number, there would be mediation to get to that first contract. We don't have that now. And the only thing the NLRB can do, and it would be good if they did this because it would be something at least, would be this kind of workaround.
All right. And just to be clear, so that everybody understands, you get recognition as a union, and then you got to get that first contract. And a lot of times what happens is you get union recognition and they just draw it out. They draw out the contract negotiations. And what's the status of the National Labor Relations Board?
Oh, I've taken over. It's my show.
I don't know.
I'm on the majority report.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know what happened to you though. What? Do we want to go to a break? Okay. Well, I don't know what you want me to do.
Wait, can I get into your screen? Look at that. Now I'm over here. I'm Sam.
Okay, let me try.
So you talk, I'll mimic, and then I'll go back and like, yes, Sam, of course. That's true. Yeah. Well, yes, you would. But fortunately, they already got that. Gwynne Wilcox was reconfirmed last week as a member of the NLRB. So there is a full complement of Democratic members on the board, and so they can make any decisions that they want. The actual case that is before the board or coming before the board right now is called Thrive Pet Healthcare. And that case, Jennifer Abruzzo, is the general counsel of the NLRB, has argued that their failure in Thrive Pet Healthcare's failure to bargain in good faith is an unfair labor practice, and it requires a remedy. And the remedy could be to order the employer to give them certain wages, benefits, hours, et cetera, that are comparable to, a unionized company in that industry. I mean, one of the problems with this remedy, of course, is that unionized companies are few and far between in a lot of industries. So it's like, what is the benchmark? Like, what would you use as the way to set up some sort of comparison between the company that you're talking about and the rest of the industry.
Yeah, we're gonna take a quick break. All right.
Sorry about that, folks. Okay, so
Sam,
yeah,
where have you
I am.
been?
I'm back. Well, the weird part is that we were still connected, and I just was, for whatever reason, prevented from going out. Classic David Dayen move. So, and we should just add, the National Labor Relations Board has also said that a non-compete agreement is an unfair labor practice. Is that right?
Well, yeah, they're at the beginning of this. So there was a complaint that was filed by a regional office. This is kind of the first step. That says, yes, a particular non-compete agreement at a company, a spa called Juvely, was an unfair labor practice. If that, goes up to the full board and the board rules and agrees with that, it would make non-compete contracts essentially unenforceable in most cases in the country. And this builds off a memo that Jennifer Abruzzo, the general counsel, wrote in May, asserting that, yes, this is an unfair labor practice. And she encouraged regional offices to find cases where she could make this case to the full board. This is the first case since that memo that has come out. And it just came out a couple of weeks ago. And so we'll see how that proceeds.
I literally want to hire a private security force around her at every day to make sure she doesn't trip or fall or whatever it is. What she's doing over there is amazing. I think. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Really huge. All right, let's turn to Google. You've written a piece, sort of the other side of the ledger. I think from my perspective, the two best things of the Biden administration, at least in terms of what they're doing with executive authority, is happening in the in the National Labor Relations Board appointments and in essentially the FTC and the DOJ's antitrust units. And so let's shift over to there. There is a trial ongoing, started last week, I guess it was. I've lost time a little bit.
It started Monday.
It started Monday. DOJ brought
Tuesday,
this against Google.
Tuesday. Yeah.
And we should say this is the first of what you call the trials of the century. This action was actually started under the Trump administration, and it's the most vanilla of what we're about to see. I don't know if vanilla is the right word, but
maybe not.
It's the one that we've seen the most of, if you have a 30-year horizon.
It's the most relatable, I think, is a good way of putting it. It doesn't mean it's a bad case. It's a very important case. It involves Google's search monopoly, which we know, 90% of all search queries are done through Google. And it was funny. I was on an interview just yesterday or a radio show, and the person who was also on said, well, I'm not really tech savvy. And, when I want to search for something, Google comes up and I just use it. I said, that's the case. That's actually the case that we're talking about. Google doesn't just come up because they're unique or they're just the best one in some way. They have paid billions and billions of dollars to phone makers like Apple and Samsung.
When you put in when you put in the slot for the URL, you're using essentially Google at that point.
Right. So they've paid device makers, they've paid browsers so that your browser, the preset is Google. and they've paid wireless networks like AT&T and T-Mobile. And so this is a way that they have maintained their monopoly. Any other company has to fight through the fact that the preset on virtually everything you use is Google. And yes, you can change that preset, but the reality is most people are like the person I was talking to on this radio show the other day, and they don't do it. They use what they've got, and they don't take the time to change their preset or change their
or they
digital
don't know
life.
that they could. I
Or
mean,
they don't even know that they could
No.
because it's not informed to them that that's an option. So this is a very valuable property. The default, as Hal Varian, who was on the stand this week, he's Google's chief economist. He coined the term "default is power." And when they asked him about this on the stand, he said, "Well, default it's important, but it's not really that important." And the lawyer for the government said, "You coined the term default is power." Like this is, you came up with the whole idea, and now you're discounting it. So
how does someone respond to that?
Well.
I was drunk. I didn't know what I was saying.
Hasn't gone that well for Google the first few days of this court case, but it's an important case. So
This is like the
it's basically
Microsoft
saying
case, right? I mean, people
it's
forget
similar.
this.
Yeah.
Microsoft used to be shipped with all computers as the default sort of
OS.
browser.
And more important, what was in that case is that the Microsoft OS, and this is 1998, that's when the Microsoft trial came out 25 years ago. It was shipped, the operating system, with the Internet Explorer browser and other browsers. And at that time, it was like, if you have the browser, you have the control. It wasn't seen like, the search engine or the social media site. The browser was the thing. And companies like Netscape and the other browsers that were out there said this is an unfair advantage. And in fact, that was what the U.S. District Court ruled. There was later a settlement in that case when there was a changeover in power of the Bush administration. But the interesting thing is 25 years ago was the beginning of Google. And the fact that Microsoft was tied up in a trial meant that they weren't interested in trying to monopolize search. They were worried about the government looking over their shoulder, and they allowed Google to get into that space among other search engine companies, other websites in general. And it opened up, the next 25 years. And then now Google's gotten too big and has, abused their monopoly. And now we're back at it again. So there are a lot of mirrors. In fact, the really interesting set of mirrors between the Microsoft case and the Google case is the fact that almost everybody prosecuting it was involved in the Google case,
Right.
including Google's lawyers. Google's lawyers, their lead in-house lawyer worked for Netscape during the Microsoft trial. The lawyer that is the one prosecuting the case, he's from Williams and Connolly, a law firm, but the one that's actually, at the trial, he worked for the government in the Microsoft case. They have a number of ex-DOJ attorneys Google has hired to try to protect their own monopoly in this case. And it's we've had Luke Goldstein, who's one of our writing fellows, at the trial because, Google has tried to sort of minimize the impact of this in the public. They have prevented a live audio feed from being distributed to people who are interested in this case. There are parts of this case that they're sealing even to the media because they say they represent proprietary trade secrets, including the price, the cost that Google paid to get that default status.
That's
on
absurd.
Things like Apple. This is revenue for Apple. This is a business cost for Google. These are two public companies, and we're not allowed to know the number that Google paid. It is absolutely ridiculous.
But the judge ruled that was.
The judge allowed that. They said it was a trade secret. Certainly there were public interest groups that tried to open up the trial, tried to change that, but it hasn't come through as yet. So even when we get the transcripts of the trial, some of them are
How can a
redacted.
price be a trade
Right.
secret? I mean, it's just absurd. That's what the whole trial is about, that you can't do this.
Exactly.
And the number is, it's amazing.
And the point is to minimize the public backlash against Google. In the Microsoft case, which was another U.S. District Court trial, there was a very celebrated part of it where Bill Gates gave a deposition, and he looked ridiculous. He was like, it was very Clintonian. He was, questioning the definition of particular words, and he was laughed at during the trial. And this was when sort of the shine came off of Bill Gates at that time, and he was seen as a much more ruthless figure. And it really damaged Microsoft from a publicity standpoint. And Google has tried at every point to stop that and make sure that this is just sort of a business story and not in the public consciousness.
So this is just a first, though. That's that's correct. And again, this is not, I think you make this point in the piece, and I think it's Barry Lynn from the Open Markets Institute says, the existence of this trial and what it's doing to Google is almost as important as, whether the government prevails here, because this is a much bigger, this is part of a whole that is much more intense in terms of like allowing for more competition and breaking down the monopolies and this concentration of power and money, frankly. What are the other trials that we should anticipate going forward? The FTC just moved on Amazon in some way, right?
Yeah. So the FTC they're almost certain to file a case against Amazon. They have a case currently against Facebook. The Amazon case is about using its monopoly power against partners and third-party sellers. The Facebook case is about the acquisition of Instagram as well as WhatsApp. There are at least 3 cases against Google. This one, there's a case against its online advertising monopoly. There's a case potentially against the Google Maps monopoly. And there's a case, a privacy case involving how Google was tracking people even when people switched to so-called incognito mode and said, I don't want to be tracked. And they were tracking them anyway. So there is, as you say, this is a signal. This is a signal that this antitrust enforcement apparatus is very interested. And it's not just tech, by the way, but in this case, in taking on these tech monopolists and making sure that we follow the letter of the Sherman Act, which is to prevent the tendency towards monopolization.
Does it have, like, I know that in the tort world, when there is a big settlement, it has implications for other companies' behavior, even if they're not involved in the settlement. It changes their calculation in terms of what the cost of doing business could be from the perspective of like a Google or an Amazon or Meta or other companies in other industries that have monopolies. Does the fact that there's this type of activity going on inhibit or change decisions that they might make business-wise? Because like, if we acquire this, or we try and buy that, or we try and do this, we're going to invite a response that could actually be far worse than whatever we could gain by doing this.
Oh, I think we're already seeing it. If you look at the statistics on mergers and acquisitions, they are down dramatically in the last 2 years. And, there's a lot of talk from the business world. If you look at the business press, they say, well, Lina Khan loses every case. Who cares what she wants to do, because the judges have our backs and she loses every case. The fact that M&A, mergers and acquisitions, is way, way down suggests that the business world doesn't actually believe that. They actually believe they're going to get in some trouble if they try to roll up an industry. and also that it's just plain wrong. She hasn't lost every case. There are many, many examples of her being successful in antitrust enforcement, as well as Jonathan Cantor, who's with, he's the head of the antitrust division of the Justice Department. So this has already had an effect. And there's a famous saying: the trial is the remedy. If you have a trial, that can go a long way to preventing this kind of conduct in the future. And as you say, that can spill beyond the company on trial.
It's almost, to use a term that's been in the news as of this week, like a metaphorical geofencing, in terms of like laying down markers where if you cross this threshold, we'll come after you. And you don't know if you're going to win or lose that case, and losing it's going to cost more than you may even be able to predict.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about. There were numbers that came out, and I want to, I know you did a review of Franklin Foer's book that has come out about the Biden administration, or is coming out about the Biden administration, and I want to also sort of dovetail that with numbers that came out this week on poverty. I'd been saying for months, I think, about, with the knowledge that child poverty had dropped so dramatically, which we didn't know that it had gone up, but we knew that it had dropped dramatically in 2021, that we have made a decision as a country, really, that that we don't care about child poverty. And even more broadly, poverty, period, with the numbers that came out, where we went from like 16% child poverty in 2020 to 5%, I think it was, in 2021, and then back up to 12% in 2022. And I imagine, you could say, well, from 2019 to 2022, we've dropped child poverty, but I imagine the graph is going this way, it's not going down.
If you use the right numbers, which I didn't use in my tweet, it really is almost no success from 2019 to 2022. In 2019 , it was the child poverty rate was at 12.6%.
Okay, so it went up in 2020 because it
went down, and actually went down in 2020 because of a number of CARES Act provisions. Went further down in 2021 because of the child tax credit, and then went all the way back to where it was in 2019. And who knows where it is today? We'll get the 2023 statistics next year. So the point is that there's sort of two ways that you can think about improving and mitigating poverty, the scourge of poverty. One is the greatest, what the Republicans say, or what some Democrats say, the greatest anti-poverty measure is a job, right? That's kind of their look at it. And if you look over time, we've had like this record job creation and very low unemployment. Outside of the pandemic, we've had that for an unbroken line for a number of years now. And it's done very little on poverty statistics. It's moved the needle very, very, very slowly. And then the other way to do it is what happened during a time of mass unemployment in 2020 and after that in 2021, which is give poor people money. And what do you know? That makes people less poor and lifts them up out of poverty. And so, what we did in rolling back those pandemic supports was a policy choice to, keep with the system of uncomfortably high poverty that we had, before we ever knew what COVID-19 was. And so that's where we are today. We made a policy choice to just abandon the most vulnerable people in society.
It really is stunning to me. It was stunning to me. Fortunately, for a day or two, we got I think a decent amount of attention from it in the media. But the idea that it's not an ongoing thing, and you get into that a little bit, I think, in the review. Not specifically that issue, but this sort of like, the dilemma that a Biden has, where it's almost like they can't talk about that dynamic because on some level it's because of Joe Manchin, right? It's because of a Democrat.
On most levels.
It's also because of the 50 Republicans who wouldn't vote for it. But from the perspective of like our polarized world, if there's one Democrat who had the ability to kill it, then the Democrats were responsible. It's not a completely irrational response, but it's certainly, a reality within the context of our politics.
I mean, it's part of the larger question of, there's this sort of large question in the discourse: are we in a good economy or not? Right? And why don't people feel this good economy as it's happening? And there are a couple issues that play there. Number one is the fact that just because inflation has moderated on a month-to-month or year-to-year basis doesn't mean that prices have gone down, right? It just means that they're going up a little more slowly, and all of the cost of living increases that happened are baked in, and people are still feeling the effects of that. And they haven't had much time. Maybe there's been a few months now where wage increases have outpaced inflation increases.
About 6 months.
We need more time for that to take hold, for people to really feel that. So that's one thing. The second thing is, when you're talking about the very poor, they were in a situation where they were actually getting help from the government, and then it went away, and it went away on Joe Biden's watch. And so, if it was from 12.6 to 12.4, and there was just this very grindingly slow, steady progress, then maybe it looks one way. But when you have this sort of valley, right, that then peaks again, it rebounds back to the party in power at the time of that continuing peak. And so I think that there are a few things going on there that make the economy, even though by certain metrics it's in good shape, by others, their personal vantage point is not so good.
And we should say it's not just, it wasn't just folks living in poverty. I mean, the child tax credit, you get $300 per child. It diminished as you went up the income spectrum, but it went up, I think, to about $140,000 for a family of of four, I think, and or for two income household, and that's $140,000. You're getting up that spectrum. So we're talking. It helped a wide range of people, and we're also seeing, we saw the rollbacks on Medicaid, which had a huge part of this. We also saw 2 weeks ago the ending of the program to provide daycare, and which we saw women's gains in the job market in terms of wages went up and hit a threshold I don't think it's ever hit before in terms of like parity with men and women entering the workforce. And I think we're about to have like 70,000, or we've just had 70,000 some odd daycare centers shuttered across the programs shuttered across the country. And that's going to have a big impact too.
Absolutely it could. And, all of the pandemic era supports the pop-up safety net that we put in place because with a crisis of that nature, it was going to be impossible for our current system to handle it. And, let's not forget the large increase in unemployment insurance. Let's not forget the increase in food aid. All of that went away. All of it was sort of kicked out. And people who were struggling in the pre-pandemic economy are struggling at pretty much the same level right now. And they saw sort of this glimmer of hope, for a year or two, and then they had that taken away from them. And so what else would you think about this economy? What else would you think about this president to a degree if that happened to you?
Frankly, that is the dynamic where you get the most discontent. Most of your revolutions happen when there's a loosening of like of oppressive policies. And, this isn't the exact same dynamic. The dynamic is similar, right? Then people had to taste it. And the interesting thing is, I think I'm shocked by how little these pop-up, if you will, programs resonated in the popular or the conventional wisdom. I think the reason why the Democrats wanted to extend COBRA, as opposed to, remember, one of the programs was, we're going to pay for your COBRA for the next, 14 months after, if you've lost a job,
Right.
as opposed to, we're going to temporarily enroll you in Medicare. And they could have done either. Enrolling in Medicare would have been a huge cost savings relative to paying for COBRA, but they didn't do that. And I think the reason why they didn't do that is because they didn't want to give people a taste of what it would be like to be on Medicare, and because they were afraid that people would want it, and that
you can see
political pressure. But we didn't get that political pressure.
Right. Yeah, that's what's interesting. You can see it in more than that. You can see it in the fact that we mass vaccinated hundreds of millions of people for free without having to, go through your insurance or anything like that. We got hundreds of millions of COVID tests sent to our house after we spent 2 seconds putting it into the U.S. Postal Service. And after Jen Psaki got on stage at the White House press secretary briefing and said, "What do you want us to just send one to everybody?" Like 2 months later, we did that, and we did it, and it was seamless, and it was perfect. And then we did it multiple times after that. Why these things don't resonate is a very interesting question. And, in reading the book, The Last Politician, which is very good and has a lot of inside
This is Foer's
information.
book.
This is Frank Foer's book. You almost see a different Biden in that book than what we're allowed to see sort of on the public stage. He's very active, involved in meetings, heavily in preparation, working on strategy, particularly there's a lot of foreign policy in the book. There's this disconnect. There's an old SNL sketch about how Reagan was a mastermind.
Yes, Bill Hartman.
You get a little of that in there. That who is this guy that is taking charge in meetings? And part of it is because the White House is so overly protective. I would say overly protective of Biden, not wanting him to open himself up to questioning. They worry about these gaffes, maybe too much to a degree. Maybe that's the price you pay for getting the guy out in the world.
We should say he was always gaffe prone.
It's not due. Now it's all wrapped up with age, right? But it's not due to age. Like the guy when he was 35 was gaffe prone.
Right.
I think we're coming off an era where with Donald Trump, the rhetoric was the policy. There was actually no other policy. It was just him being around and talking, and that made it look like he was active and engaged and involved and doing things, whether you liked them or not. It made it seem like there was things happening when in reality, there kind of wasn't at many levels. Here, Biden sort of had this conscious choice, and his administration has this conscious choice, like, we don't want to be on the front page every day. We don't want to be tweeting madly and running policy that way. We don't want to be the story. We want to do our job. And I think there has been an overcorrection there because the fact is that if you're a politician and you want to keep public support, you have to play that game to a certain degree.
We got to jump, but quick response. Any chance that the child tax credit gets in because of all this government shutdown mess? That anybody leverage yet?
Yeah, I seriously doubt it. There has been this discussion that there's this discussion of an exchange, and the exchange would be the research and development tax credit, which parts of which went away, which is very coveted by businesses. And in exchange for that, you do a 1-year extension of the advanced enhanced child tax credit. Ron Wyden has been at the forefront of trying to push for that. I don't see it. I just don't think that's likely to happen. We'll be lucky if we actually get the government funded, let alone add new tax programs to it. So that's my thought.
All right, David Dayen, always a pleasure. I learned so
October
much
16th.
from you. Yes,
October 16th.
We'll talk about
Mark it down. Save the date.
David Dayen, again, always a pleasure. Folks, go do yourself a favor. Go to prospect.org and then do everybody a favor. There's no paywall there. It is reader supported because they value it. And you should all do that. David, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, Shunte Sanders Beasley, former vice president of UAW Local 869. She's a worker at the Stellantis Stamping Plant in Warren, Michigan. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. On the phone, we have Shunte Sanders Beasley, former vice president of the UAW Local 869, work at the Stellantis Stamping Plant in Warren, Michigan. Shunte, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So, there's 13,000 of of the 146,000 UAW workers who are striking today in different areas around the country. Are you one of them?
No, not as of yet. There's always the possibility that our local could be tapped. If we get the phone call, then we join in on the strike.
So give us some of the numbers and what facilities are being struck right now, and do we know how long those are going to be struck? Are we going to see a different set of facilities, on Monday? What's happening?
This is a little different from what has happened in the past. Typically, in the past, what they've done is you have your target company and you strike the whole company. Back in 2019, it was GM. So, GM walked out for, I believe it was 51 days. President Dayen is taking a different direction where he's calling this a stand-up strike or a target strike. So right now we have 3 assembly plants out. Toledo North Assembly Plant, or you'll hear them refer to it as TNAP. We have our Wentzville plant, which is GM, and then Ford Michigan Assembly, and that's in Dearborn, Michigan. But again, those are all assembly plants.
I see. And what's the idea? What's the idea with why assembly plants? Do you know? Why is that the first targets?
I think different people would have their own reasoning. I feel like With the assembly plant, you're dealing with your final product. That's once it leaves assembly, it's going to the dealerships or to the car lots. So if you stop the assembly plants or the flow out of the assembly plants, you're affecting their bread and butter. There's no product going to the lots. They have to live, the car lots have to live off their inventory that they have now. Some may have, 180 days. Some may have 30 days, but there's nothing leaving. The plants that he did choose are the big moneymaker plants. Of course, like with Toledo North, I can speak for Stellantis. Our Jeep comes out of Toledo North, and that's a huge seller for us.
I see. That makes sense.
So that's why I feel like he did it. Yeah, that's why I feel like he went after the assembly plant.
And give me a sense of, if you're at one of the facilities that is not striking, like what is the sense amongst local 869 workers? Are they itching? Are people itching to get on the line? Like, or how is, if you're not one of those people, how are you engaging in stuff?
Yeah, it's safe to say everyone's itching to get on the line. And that's a little weird because who wants to go on strike? But yes, President Fain, the momentum was there. Everyone was engaged and everyone was ready to walk. So even though we didn't get to walk out at midnight, we do support our brothers and sisters that are out on the line. A lot of us will go out to probably Michigan, Dearborn, Michigan, to the Ford plant and help out. Some of us, I plan on going there, and then I plan on driving to Toledo at some point to go help them unless we're called. So the momentum is still there, because it's a cause that we have to fight for, we need to fight for. And again, like you said, everyone's very excited.
Let's talk a little bit about those things that you are fighting for. Give us a sense of like what your working situation has been, and what the union is demanding from these big three.
We're demanding or asking for the things that we gave up back during the recession in 2008, 2009. So, pensions. We have what they call the two-tier system. That's a big piece. We want that system gone. In 2007, if you were hired after October 2007, you're considered a two-tier. So you don't have the defined pension. They also, upon retirement at this point, they have no medical. So they're working without a pension and then towards no medical after retirement. We lost COLA, the cost of living allowance. So many things. Our retirees. Oh my God, our retirees haven't had a raise in over 20 years as far as their cost of living as well. So yeah, we're fighting. We're definitely, we want the care system ended. We want COLA back. We're basically asking raises. But people are hung up on this, the fact that he asked for a 42% wage increase. And yeah, when you look at 42%, someone say, oh my God, that's a huge increase all at once. But you have to take that 42% and you have to spread it over the past 18 years, because we were stagnant where we didn't get a raise from roughly around 2003 or up until 2019, and I think it was a total of $1.60. So some of us hadn't had a raise since 2003. Some would say since '99.
So this is like back pay, essentially.
Yes.
And I think people forget this, but and maybe frankly some folks were too young, but in 2008 the car industry in this country was spiraling down a hole, and There was a combination. I mean, the government literally stepped in with GM, but certainly Ford and what was, I don't know if it was called Chrysler at the time.
Nope. It was Cerberus at the time.
They basically got huge concessions from their workforce. And now here we are 15 years later, and they're making billions upon billions of dollars, but the workers never got recompensated or readjusted after that. It's as if we're living in the wake of a financial crisis that had destroyed the industry, and the fact is we're nowhere near that at all.
Exactly. And it's like the corporations decided to have selective amnesia. I think they act like they forgot about that, because they came to us and they basically came to us with, we need your help in order, to save the corporations. So we gave up, like I said, we gave up quite a bit. We gave up dollar on the hours. We gave money back off our salary in order to help save them, because they were talking about going belly up. So it was in a sense, it was a win-win for everyone. But they did tell us, once we get viable again, we'll return all these things to you. Like in terms of the two-tier wage system, it started out where there was a 25% cap. And that means once they got to, and this was like corporate-wide, once you got to the 25% with the second tier, you cap that, and then you start rolling those people over into being a traditional, what's called a traditional worker.
I see.
That never happened. That never happened.
So wait a second. So let me just be clear. They're basically saying we're going to hire a new class of workers, but that class of workers will never be more than 25% of our workforce, because as soon as we 25% of our workforce is at tier is comprised of tier 2 workers, the first into that 25% will now move into the traditional workers. And so we'll just, you gotta sort of like some type of seniority program.
Right. So it was done through attrition. So what would happen is, once you got to that, as soon as you hit 26%, that 1%, via retirements, deaths, you had to have the actual openings. So if you had 50 openings, you would have those 50 people that would roll over into the to become a traditional worker. So you did have a path to become a traditional worker, but it never happened.
And for the tier 2, like how long? Well, I guess it's not temporal, right? I mean, I guess, and so what percentage of tier 2 workers are working in the industry now?
Wow. With Stellantis, it's a huge number. I'm not going to say that they outnumber the traditional worker as of yet, but it's getting there.
Wow.
Because you have to look at it in a sense that in under 10 years, most of your traditional workers can retire. Because again, the two-tier system started in 2007. So you really start seeing them come in around 2010. So like I said, in less than 10 years, most of your traditional workers would have already retired or can retire. So you'll just have all the tier 2 people left, along with the little sprinkles of traditionals that are still there. The problem that we're facing now is our temporary worker situation. And they're called different things, and depending on which company you're talking about. With Stellantis, they're called SEs, a supplemental worker. the path to becoming full time is ridiculous. I know some supplemental workers that have been there for about 7 years. They've been temporary workers for 7 years. I'm sure there are some out there that have been temporary workers longer than that. So that's a big piece of the negotiations too. They need to have a path to full time. I mean, whatever happened to the 90 days and you get rolled over.
Let me ask you this.
That's not
the reason why, in my estimation, and I think the car industry, for whatever reason, well, I think it's because of the UAW, because they're afraid of worker solidarity and the workers, and they're afraid of workers, of worker power. I've cited this book Wrecked to the point where it's comedic on this show, about how the just-in-time supply lines were changed so as to diminish worker power. But one of the things that often management will do is they'll create multiple tiers so that the traditional workers, that as they're called, aren't necessarily, when it comes time for contract negotiations, it creates, by creating two tiers of workers, and it sounds like there may even be more when you include those supplemental workers, those temporary ones. By creating these multiple tier of workers, it diminishes the solidarity of the workers, where people are like, well, I'm okay on this, and so why are we wasting our bargaining strength on that? Tell me how what's going on with that, because that to me seems to be like, and I think Fain has addressed this a little bit, but like, how much of that dynamic is at play, or are we just seeing a solidarity that? Talk to me about the solidarity in regards to that, and maybe as you've seen it for however many years you've been working in this industry.
That dynamic is definitely there. So let me ask you this: how would you feel? You come in and you make $15 an hour, and they place you right next to someone making $31 an hour, and you guys are doing the same job.
Yeah.
That's a horrible feeling on both sides. I know I felt bad, because again, here's someone that's making half of what I'm making, but you expect them to work just as hard as I'm working. And it can sometimes create a hostile work environment. The way we were able to work around that over the years, I mean, and it's still there. That's a daily thing we deal with. But in terms of solidarity, the way we were able to get to where we are now was through education. They reach one, teach one, and you just have to, as soon as they come in the door, it's like the big brother, big sister thing. You start pulling them to the side, and you start talking to them, and you start educating them on, exactly what the union is and what the union can do for you. And we're in this fight together. I know, there are differences with us now, but if we stick together and we fight together, we win together. And that's where we are now with President Fain. He's taken the union, the UAW, in a different direction. It's a more progressive direction. And we're not just fighting for members of the UAW. We're fighting for the entire American workforce. Because again, if we win, everyone wins. In the past, when the UAW bargained, their contracts kind of set the tone for what would happen with workers, not just in America, but around the world. So they sit back and they watch our contracts unfold. I'm sure you remember when we rolled out the two-tier system. As soon as we did it, everyone started doing it. Right. And, the old saying is, once you let something out, get something out there, it's hard to reel it back in sometimes. So that's been the fight, trying to get rid of it. And it needs to go because, like you said, it creates it creates division, and management does use it as a tool to pit us against each other. So at contract time, you pit us against each other. Prime example was the 2015 and 19 contract, where the traditional workers had to sit back and watch the in progression workers get all the raises. But it was in an effort to at least try to get them up to where we were. But you couldn't move them and move us too, because you were kind of defeating the purpose. Right. But because of the way that a lot of us had been brought up, we understood. And we didn't turn around and lash out at them and take it out on them. We understood the process, and now we're at a point in time where, for the most part, they've all peaked to where we are. So in the last contract, they were able to bridge a lot of that gap and bring them up to where we are. If there's any difference, it's minimal. But what Sean wants to do is it's equal pay for equal work, straight across the board. So we want the tier systems gone. We want to get rid of the tier systems. They want to add more layers. And it does hurt at contract time because, like you said, they'll dangle a certain carrot. If you read some of if you've seen some of the proposals that have been tossed out, you'll see where the verbiage will say for certain people, or, most of the membership, some of the membership. It won't cover the whole membership. And that's what he wants to do away with. You're going to address my whole membership. That's why I really like the way he went about these negotiations, where he brought all three companies to the table. So one company doesn't have the opportunity to sit back and say, oh, okay, I can go in and tweak that, or I can tear that down. They're all sitting there together.
Yeah,
and I love that.
How long have you been a member?
25 years, but that's just me physically working. I've actually, I've been a UAW member since as far back as I can remember, because I walked my first picket line with my mom when I was 5 years old.
Wow.
So I've been doing this a long time.
Well, so give me a sense. I mean, with that said, give me a sense of how does this feel different than in any strike or any type of negotiations, or just even in the absence of the actual actions? Is there feel like there is a difference amongst the membership?
Oh, there's a huge difference. Up until President Fain, there always seemed to be a disconnect with the international, the IEB, or International Executive Board, or even the reps in international and the local level. So, most people, if you ask someone who's just coming into the union and you ask them, their mindset is going to be like parent-child. The international reps or international is the parent, local level is the child. So we need help, we call mom or dad. But there was a disconnect there. And we didn't get a lot of information. The communication wasn't there. Sean is doing something totally different. He is being totally transparent, and he is sharing information, and that is something we've never had. So we were never kept the updates and things like that. We never really got that. It was, they would go to the table, they would sit down, and then they would bring us a tentative agreement. They would give us the highlights of the tentative agreement. Growing up with my mom, who consulted with the UAW, the one thing I remember her always saying is, when they bring you the good, ask them to show you the bad. So they never did that. So, they just brought us the good stuff, and they came with, this is the best we could do. I've yet to hear him say that. Actually, he hasn't even brought us a tentative, because if it's not looking good, I'm sure you've seen, he tosses it in the trash can.
Yep.
And, let's start over. So President Thane has shown up, and he's shown the membership that he's willing to fight and that he's willing to fall on the sword for us. We've never had that in the past. I mean, unless you want to go back to Walter Reuther. We've not had that. We've not had the leadership that actually seemed like they really, really cared for the membership. He has the membership's best interest at heart. I know Sean from Kokomo, but Sean was in Kokomo, and I worked at the Indianapolis Foundry. So I know the fight. I remember the fight that he had when he was just a committeeman back in Kokomo. And like, again, I'm 50 miles away, and we would hear about him because he was always a stand-up guy. So he makes it easy for you to want to support him. He makes himself available. He's tangible and touchable. I mean, past presidents, if you ask people, you'll never hear people say that they got to meet the international UAW president. He's a people's person, and he has no problem being out. And he'll take time out to talk to his membership. He's accessible, and that's something that the starvation was there, and now it's more of a thing that he's feeding his membership, and his membership is flocking to him, and they believe in him, and they believe he can get the things done that he says he's going to get done. They don't feel like they're being lied to. They don't feel like that their leadership is stealing from them or taking advantage of them. He's turned the ship around, and it's floating in a different direction, and they're very happy with the direction that it's going in.
Well, it all sounds really inspiring, and how can people who are not members of the UAW, how can we help?
Community is a big thing in the midst of a strike. The first thing, I'm big on education, especially when it comes to the union. I'm huge on education, and the first thing I would say is, if you're not in the union or a non-union member, join the union. That's the first thing I'm going to tell you. Educate yourself, because we're not bad people. Some of our biggest fights right now are with non-union members because you guys are being greedy. You guys are being that, and it's not greed. Until you've worked in manufacturing, until you've had to sling steel all day long, you won't understand the toll that it takes on your body. I feel like, I hear people say, well, you guys talk about raising the cost, raising the wages, back during the fight for 15, and someone who works at McDonald's shouldn't make $15 or $20 an hour. Why not? Because they have to pay the same bills that you have to pay. So everyone needs a decent wage. So we try to pour into the community as best we can, because we all know there's going to be a time that we're going to need them, and right now we need the community. Right, for the plants that are on strike, if they are in your area, bottled water. Locals have food pantries, so you can drop canned goods off, dry goods, and different things like that, because you never know which member in the plant, even before the strike, may have been facing some type of financial struggle, and they're living paycheck to paycheck. So while they're on strike, they're only getting $500 a week. So we encourage the community to come out and help. Come out and walk the picket line. You can do that. It's an experience that you will never forget. I plan on actually going and getting my grandson out of Indianapolis and doing the same thing for him that my mom did for me. So that just physically being there really helps. And, people will say, oh, the action happens on days. And it does. But the picket line goes on 24/7. While the strike is going on, because, for instance, if they pull my plant out tomorrow, I work midnight. So on my assigned day, I'll walk the picket line during my regular work hours, which is 12 a.m. I want to do 6 hours, 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. those are the hardest shifts to pull because it's dark out, it's slow. That's when we need that encouragement. When you ride past the picket line and you see picketers, blow your horn, yell out. We need that encouragement. We need to know that the community is behind us. And in turn, we're always behind the community when they need things. But educate yourself. That's huge.
Shunte Sanders Beasley, former vice president of UAW Local 869, a worker at the Stellantis Stamping Plant in Warren, Michigan. Thanks so much for your time today. Good luck with.
Thank you.
With the ongoing standing strike. Good luck with the negotiations, and we hope to check in with you soon. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, folks. We're going to head into the should we just do a freebie Friday? I did short shows for
whatever you want.
No, let's go. We go into the fun half.
All right.
We'll go into the fun half. We'll be quick. I need to have a coughing fit. Folks, I just want to remind you I had a little bit of a coughing fit during the interview, but I was able to hit my cough button. Folks, just to remind you, it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free half free of commercials, you get the fun half. And you get, you can I am the show with the app. The app is free for everybody. Check out amquickie.com. But you're supporting the show. So it's not just like what you get. It's also a way of just supporting the work. And if you listen a couple of times a week, you're getting a value. You're getting a real deal, folks. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Bradley, what did Emma and you do on the COVID edition of ESPN yesterday?
Yes, we were fortunately able to have a ESPN broadcast yesterday with Emma remote. We discussed some of the happenings from the week that was in the NFL. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers' big injury, the Giants getting creamed by the Cowboys, a few other odds and ends. Discussed the lawsuit that former NFL Network journalist Jim Trotter's lobbying against the NFL media for discrimination and retaliation. As well as our three picks for the weekend, our three betting picks for the weekend, and our Survivor Pool picks. So youtube.com/ESPN show for more if you want to check that out.
And check out Left Reckoning. Who was on this week? Do you know? I mean, Matt apparently was run out of gas by the end of that thing. He was gasping for air.
There was a Griscom stream that David did yesterday, but also on Tuesday, David and Matt were back and they discussed they did a deep dive on that Gurner guy, that Australian guy who said that there was too much arrogance in the labor market. And then they also spoke with Mexico-based journalist Kurt Hackbarth to talk about President Obrador, his potential successor, and they revamped his segment that he does on their show called The Lies the New York Times Tells About Mexico. So youtube.com/leftreckoning for more and patreon.com/leftreckoning to get the postgame.
All right, quick break. Fun half, 646-257-3920 is the number. We'll take a couple calls, not many. We don't have too much time, folks. All right, but see you in the fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy!
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
we are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Fun half, ladies and gentlemen. Star Fox. Sam, the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce has just come out with the Worcester Guardian, an independent, free, nonprofit digital news organization, which will deliver free, civically oriented journalism on an array of topics important to Worcester. That sounds good.